One of the features that makes complex text complex is the presence of numerous rare and previously unencountered words. A good example is the first chapter of Charlotte's Web, where in 1,000 words of text, there are approximately 90 words that end of primary grade students probably haven't encountered previously in text. In the past, textbook programs have used a tier approach, in which approximately 8 to 10 words have been identified from among these 90 words. That is, around 10% of the hard words. These words are not necessarily connected to one another, nor do they necessarily represent the very most important concepts in the story. But they're repeated in sentences, conversations, definitions, and in writing. Typically, students know these words when tested in similar contexts, but they don't do better than students who haven't had a similar treatment when tested on distal vocabulary tasks. That is, in different contexts and over extended periods of time. We've learned a great deal about the words in written language as a result of linguists studying large bodies of vocabulary as texts have been digitized. One of the things that we've learned is that stories, such as Charlotte's Web, have numerous unique words that are not repeated, but that describe important concepts in the story. That is, an author of a high-quality piece of literature doesn't use the same word to describe a character's action, for example, the word yelled to describe Fern's sense of injustice, but uses a variety of words to describe how the character feels. Students typically know about the concepts underlying these words, even though they might not recognize the words immediately. For example, blissful for happy or miserable for unhappy. In fact, the principle underlying the tier approach is that the selected words should represent sophisticated forms of known concepts. But in a Common Core classroom, students need to move beyond learning only 8 to 10 of the 90 or more hard words in a text. From among all these new words, they need to learn the words that represent the underlying functions and concepts in text. We need to take a generative approach to vocabulary that supports students in understanding and anticipating that authors use multiple words to convey content. This is the essence of close reading, where vocabulary is used to understand how an author creates the essential content of a text. Let me illustrate close reading with vocabulary as I do a think aloud through the first chapter of Charlotte's Web. Here we see the introduction of the chapter, and Fern's mother is telling Fern that a runt is going to be put away. And Fern's response is to shriek right here, and then she pushes a chair out of the way and runs outdoors. So we've seen the problem, and we see that runt is described as small and weak, won't amount to anything. We're seeing Fern's reaction. She just doesn't react in a single way. She doesn't keep shrieking. She now pushes a chair out of the way and she runs outdoors. When she sees her father, she sobs. She declares it's not fair. And she expresses herself in another way. Note that the author isn't using the word shriek or sobbed again. Now she's yelling. And she's also not just saying it's unfair, she's saying it's a matter of life and death. Father doesn't call it a runt this time, he calls it a weakling. So what we're seeing here are multiple ways of framing the same ideas. She once more says it's unfair, and she's declaring this to be a terrible case of injustice. So she's stated it's unfair, it's a matter of life and death. There are different ways in which this circumstance has been described. We also see some different points of view from family members who don't necessarily agree with Fern's decision. So we hear her father saying, presumably in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, saved from an untimely death. We see her brother describing this pig as a fine specimen. This is sarcastically said because in fact then we see the phrase, it's no bigger than a white rat. And again, Fern's father describing it as trying to rid the world of injustice. So we see an alternative perspective, but you notice here that the author doesn't have the characters describe it all in the same way. Avery states something sarcastically that's also described then by no bigger than a white rat. Father says it's untimely death, ridding the world of injustice. And then we move on to see how happy Fern is that she has been able to be successful with this. She's blissful, she's lucky, she comes up with a beautiful name, and then she's acting dreamily. What we're wanting to do is, rather than a small number of words, what we're doing, as this graph shows, is we're teaching underlying concepts. We're teaching students a number of words that can mean the same kind of thing, and we're also illustrating to them that authors in good literature can be anticipated to use a multiple of words to describe some of these core concepts. We hope you'll join us again and send us your questions and queries at textproject.org. Thank you.